Fears of pollution in the North Sea after yesterday's collision between an oil tanker and a cargo ship. The Coast Guard says there are still flames on one of the vessels. The search for a missing crew member has now been called off. 36 others were safely brought ashore. There are concerns about pollution and a threat to wildlife after yesterday's collision in the North Sea between a cargo ship and an oil tanker laden with jet fuel. The search for one missing crew member has now been called off. 36 others were safely brought ashore. Well, this is the live aerial shot of the Solong, the cargo vessel that was involved in that collision. It has now been confirmed it was not carrying sodium cyanide, as had first been feared. This vessel now appears to be drifting. As you can see, there are crews still trying to extinguish flames on board that vessel. Well, our reporter Nick Johnson has the latest.
With a gaping hole gouged into its hull, the American-flagged oil tanker lies ravaged by fire and abandoned in the North Sea, a day after it was struck by a Portuguese cargo vessel off the East Yorkshire coast. That ship is now drifting southwards and is being monitored by the Coast Guard.
Solong has collided with tanker Stena Immaculate.
Thick black smoke billowed into the sky for hours following the collision. The US ship Stena Immaculate was carrying 43 million litres of jet fuel, believed to be for the American military. Despite earlier concerns, the owners of the Portuguese vessel, the Solong, have confirmed there was no sodium cyanide on board, just empty containers which previously held the toxic chemical. Investigators will now retrieve a black box-style recorder from the ships.
Has there been a human element factor in this to allow a ship travelling somewhere which is known to have a lot of traffic? You know, this is the entrance to a busy port. We have to really think about what really could have gone wrong. And in most maritime cases, it tends to be the human element.
Crews from both ships scrambled to life rafts. 36 were safely brought ashore. The search for a missing crew member from the Solong has been called off. One American sailor from the Stena Immaculate told the BBC's partner CBS that he only had seconds to react as a massive ship came out of the blue. He described the flames being so close that some sailors had singed hair. The US-flagged tanker had sailed from Greece and was due to continue along the Humber into Hull. The Portuguese vessel, the Solong, was travelling from Grangemouth in Scotland to Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Questions are now being asked about how the spillage of jet fuel stored on the US ship could impact the local environment.
It's lighter than water, so it will stay on the surface largely, and anything, of course, that comes into contact with it, I mean, if it's neat jet fuel, will ingest fatal quantities.
The Humber estuary is a busy fishing ground and hosts huge seabird colonies.
They come to this place because they want to feed on the mudflats there. Obviously, a concern here is if pollutants are getting into the system, is that could affect the food in those mudflat systems, also the birds that are feeding on them. And we are talking about hundreds of thousands of birds that come here.
The Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, is due to meet the head of the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency later to discuss the ongoing situation. As investigations get underway into how this collision could have happened, environmental groups will be monitoring closely the longer-term effects to the coastline in Yorkshire and beyond. Nick Johnson, BBC News.
And our reporter Phil McCann is in Grimsby, close to where that collision happened. Phil, what are the latest developments?
Well, we've just had an update from the Transport Minister, Mike Kane, in the House of Commons in the last half hour, Ben. And he has confirmed that the fire on board the oil tanker, the Immaculate, is now out, but that the Solong, as we may have seen from those pictures, is still alight. The vessels have, of course, now become disentangled from each other. That happened overnight. The Coast Guard confirmed that the Solong at that point began to drift south. It is now at a location just to the north of Mablethorpe, which is in Lincolnshire, to the south of where I am here. Mr Kane also in the Commons confirmed that the modelling that the government has access to suggests that the ship is unlikely to remain afloat. He says it will remain clear of land for the next few hours. We have also, incidentally, here in Grimsby over the last couple of hours seen equipment that's usually used to deal with pollution events out at sea coming and going from this port. So a very busy operation that is very much still ongoing.